All right, it is day one of being obedient to what I feel like God has called me to do. So here I am recording this video. We will see where this goes. We will see where subsequent videos go. But if we haven't met before, my name is Marina, and one of the calls on my life is to help people tell their stories and bring their stories into the world in book form. And I guess I will start today with just a little bit about how I got here. I feel like my love for stories goes back to my grandmother, who taught me how to read when I was 3 years old and really instilled in me just the importance of story and how stories can be a mirror to our own lives and a window into lives different than ours. And I was that kid that would be hiding under my bed when I was supposed to be asleep with a flashlight reading a book, and my mom would have to come in and be like, Marina, it's past your bedtime. I was that kid. And so I had long loved stories, and then that led me actually to college, where I did pursue a degree in literature. It led me into the classroom as a full-time high school English and English language development teacher, where I got to share my love of stories with students. But even more important than share my love of stories is get my students to see that they had something of value to say. So now fast forward all these years later, and again, one of the great privileges and calls of my life is to help people tell their stories. So back a decade, maybe even more than that, I did found a little boutique author coaching and book publishing company called Full Circle Press. And how Full Circle Press even came about is I was at an educator conference, and self-publishing was just coming onto the scene, and I found myself walking around. I was hearing some really great speakers and just absorbing a lot and learning a lot from the speakers. And then I was going around the exhibit hall, and I was looking at many of their tables, and I was picking up their books that many of them had self-published. And I saw what I would call a lack of alignment. I heard these amazing speakers and educators, and they had so much to offer. And then I picked up their physical books, and some of them, to be perfectly honest, were just a little underwhelming or mismatched. I was like, how could that amazing person that I heard not have a product that matches that? And I was like, well, what if I could assemble a small team and we could really help people get their stories into the world with a high level of excellence and integrity. And even before officially founding Full Circle Press, I published a few books, co-authored and published a few books of my own under a different imprint, and really saw wow, there's a lot of pieces to this. There's a lot of things that go into getting a book from someone's heart into the hands of the readers who need it most. And it was something that I really found that I loved to do. And so I started Full Circle Press, I founded it, and honestly, I treated it like a hobby for many years. And I say treated it like a hobby in that we were publishing books every year. I had a small team, but I didn't really, it was just something I liked to do that I would do on the side of whatever else I was doing. And Full Circle Press operated, and I feel like God sustained it for a number of years under that model. And then a few years ago, and I went on to do other things. I was educational consulting full-time, building another business, building a life, to be honest. But Full Circle Press just would never let up off of me. This call that I felt to help people tell their stories and get stories that matter, that often go unheard or unacknowledged out into the world. I couldn't let go of that call. And so then a number of years ago, I did feel like God was calling me to go into this full time. And so I did that. I made the leap and said, Full Circle Press is where I am going to devote my professional energy. And so here we are today. I have an incredible team, a small but mighty team that's walked this road alongside me for a lot of years. And I can't wait to share in subsequent videos just the stories of how our lives have intersected, and and how that's intersected with the lives of the clients, the authors who we've been able to work with. And so if someone would say, like, what's the origin story of Full Circle Press, I would say that it's that. And along with that, I would just say that even thinking about and like reflecting on my own journey and how I got here, I do think that there's a lot of lessons that I've learned about sticking to what you know you're supposed to be doing, even if there's like physical evidence in this world of the contrary. And as a believer now, I frame that into like the call of God on my life, like what God has called me to. And it doesn't matter if the circumstances in any given moment might not be matching up to that vision that I know that God has given me. Like, I know what he said about the stories that we're being called to bring into the world and why. And so I think sticking to a vision, sticking to, whether you call it a vision, a dream, a commission, a calling, like sticking to it, even if everything around you doesn't look like this is ever going to come to pass, right? Because sometimes what we see in front of us in the natural world can actually be very deceptive and doesn't tell the whole story. And so I think that is one thing that I have learned. Another thing that goes along with that at the same point in time is being like solid to the vision that you've been given, also being flexible with the methods. Like in some ways, Full Circle Press looks nothing like I thought it was going to look like. We're not necessarily telling the stories that in the very beginning that I thought that we were going to be telling. And so I think also being flexible with some of the methods and being able to let go of maybe my ego sometimes about what I thought it should look like or what I think that it should look like, and just be open and available to changing course when courses need to change, and having flexibility to, again, honor the vision, but be flexible with the methods. That being said, I think that the foundation that we build things on, whether we're talking about a foundation of a book that we're writing or a foundation of a business that we're building or just a foundation of the lives that we're living, I do feel like building on a strong foundation does matter, even when the world will tell you that everything is shaky, so you just need to go with the flow. I mean, I think we can be flexible, but I don't think that everything is shaky. I think that a lot of things that we see in this world are shaky. But I do believe that there's a firm foundation upon which we can build our lives and build our businesses, build our relationships, build our homes, both literal and metaphorical, and build things that not only matter to us, but are going to make the impact that we are to be called to make. Another thing I think I've learned in this journey is that, let me pause here for a second. I'm not coming to these videos with scripts. I'm not even coming to this video with any notes. I feel like the instruction I'm being given in this season, and this is a little uncomfortable for someone who really likes to prepare everything, is just show up live every single day, turn on the camera, record, post what you have recorded, and move on to the next. And so that's what we are going to be doing until I feel like I'm led to do something different. So back to the third point. The third point that I think I've learned, so a few things I think I've learned along this journey, or I know I've learned, is one, be faithful to the vision no matter what it looks like around you at any given moment. Number two, be flexible. Number three, within that vision and flexibility with methods and how things look, be open and available to, things not looking like what you think they might have looked like. And also building on a solid foundation. So that would really be three, is like, what is the foundation that you're building anything on? Is it something that matters? Is it something that's going to be eternal? Or is it something that's very temporal or very shaky? And then the fourth thing that I would say is be okay. Be okay with being faithful to the things that nobody will see ever. A couple of years ago, it was actually 2024, I really felt like what the word I got at the top of the year was that we would publish 10 books in 2024. And that felt crazy to me because moving from a business that was very part-time into a more full-time enterprise, while at the same time having a lot of other things shifting in my life, I was like, 10 books in a year is a lot. Like 10 books, that's like 3 times as much as we normally published in a year, because when we work with our authors, we like really go in deep with them. And so we spend a lot of time with them. It's very time intensive work. There's a lot of emotional labor involved, a lot of physical labor involved in getting these books into production with integrity. So I was like, wow, 10 is a lot. But at the end of 2024, we looked back and we did it. 10 books were published, 10 books made their way into the world. But it wasn't what I thought it was going to look like. And a lot of that work, so I thought, I was like, oh, well, if we're putting 10 books into the world, then that's going to move Full Circle Press into this other place in terms of, and I'll be honest, there was a lot of like my ego at the time involved in this, like, oh, other people are going to notice us. They're going to notice these amazing stories, these authors. Like, I thought that obedient step was going to come with a lot of visibility, and it didn't. It's like we ended the year, and aside from my team celebrating, like, wow, we published 10 books this year, a lot of things on the outside didn't look a whole lot different. Publishing 10 books did not result in 10 times of the income or the revenue, and that's not the way that it worked out because of the projects and the projects we worked on and how we worked on them, and so much of what I learned that year, even about what our overhead looked like and what it actually, like the actual labor it took to bring this many projects into the world, and what that level of growth would look like. And so I've learned in reflecting back, like, to be okay, and this is something I'm still working on, like, be okay with doing the work in quiet, whether anyone notices or not, whether it has the outcomes that you think it's going to have or that you want it to have or not. Like, be obedient to the process and let the outcomes be what they are. And I would say that transitioning now into just a couple of tips I would have if you're watching this, and whether it's building a business or writing a book that is on your heart, it's like, have integrity to the process. If God called you to write a book, if you're feeling led to do that, focus on that. Don't focus on that and also how many books you're going to sell, or are you going to become a bestseller, or this or that. Like, those outcomes, many of those things, yes, there are things you can put in place to make those outcomes possibly more likely, but the outcomes oftentimes aren't really our responsibility. The fidelity to the process and the product, yes, we have a lot of responsibility in that, to do that with the highest level of integrity and excellence. And yes, I always think we should think about who's going to be on the receiving end of whatever it is that we're creating or producing. Like, who is this going to help? Who is it going to give some hope to and some life to? And at the same point in time, can we hold loosely to a lot of the outcome measures that the world will tell us is important? Like, oh, how many books did you sell in your first week? Like, yes, that is one metric of success. But there are other metrics as well. And I guess I'll finish with a story. One of our authors, she published in 2024. And I asked her last year at some point, I said, what was the most successful part of your book launch to you? Like, what had the greatest impact on you? And she didn't talk about the room that was filled when she did an in-person launch event. She didn't talk about like the 100 people that showed up to that event. She didn't talk about the number of books that she sold at that event. She didn't even talk about the reach that her book was having or beginning to have, the momentum it was building. She talked about a single reader, a young girl who got the book in her hands and who this author was actually able to connect with on a personal level and talk with about her dreams and what she wanted to do with her life. And this author was able to speak life into one of her readers and just really connect with her. And she said that conversation that only came about because the girl had gotten the book into her hands and wanted to know if she could ever meet the author, that conversation, that connection, she said, was the coolest thing that had happened since her book had been released. And I love that story because it just reminds me that, at least for me personally, if I am in this space where part of my call is to help people put their stories into the world with integrity, then the stories around the stories, I also need to continue to collect those as well, to share those as well, And that's something I definitely do feel like I'll be doing in this space. I can't wait to have conversations with a lot of our authors, bringing them on just in conversation with me so we can talk about what the process was like for them, and also just share more about my journey and the lessons I've learned along the way. I actually am much more comfortable telling other people's stories than I am telling my own, which is part of why even being in this context is a little uncomfortable for me, but I'm just gonna work through that uncomfortability and see where I am whenever this iteration of whatever I'm doing here with these videos kind of comes to a natural culmination. But I'm excited to see how I grow in this space, how I push myself in this space, and what stories then are attached to it. And so I guess this is day one of what I am going to be calling the StoryUp experiment. I say StoryUp experiment. I don't know if it's going to be a podcast. I don't know if it's going to be a show, but StoryUp, it was a name that was given to me a few years ago, and I just kind of put it in on the back burner of like ideas that I have that maybe I'll do one day. And at the time I thought it was going to be like a very structured podcast, and maybe this will turn into that and maybe not. But StoryUp is what we're going to be doing here. And there's a lot of talk in the world about leveling up and like how do we level up and how do we level up, and I would say how do we story up? How do we elevate stories that matter? How do we hear somebody else's story and then have the courage to tell our own? How do we talk about the work around the visible things that people might see? How do we talk about what does it really take to follow that dream that's been placed on your heart? What does it really take to, as a friend of mine was saying last night, I was on a YouTube live with her, her book just launched, and we were talking about the process, and she said, she just kept talking about this idea of just not giving up, and that many people, like, we just get out of the fight too soon. So like, what does it look like to stay in the fight, whatever that fight is for us? So I think that's going to be it for today. I feel like I've been all over the place. I started with the origin story of Full Circle Press, and even before that, the importance of stories in my life. And then I talked about a couple of things that I learned from building this business and being in this work for over a decade. And I also talked a little bit about the importance of telling stories and the impact that those can have on others' lives. And then also shared something that I didn't even realize that I was going to share, officially giving this a name, the StoryUp. I don't know if it's just going to be called StoryUp. I don't know if it's going to be called the StoryUp experiment, but we are storying up. We are going to be taking space to listen to stories, including our own, and honor them. And I am just super excited. And that is it for day one. I am out.